I didn't recognize him at first either, which is probably the only reason I had the nerve to talk to him. It was one of those slow, forgettable afternoons. I ducked into a small cafe just to kill time, the kind of place that tries a little too hard to feel cozy. Plants in every corner, soft music, people pretending to read. I remember standing in line, half scrolling through my phone, when the guy in front of me turned slightly to the side to grab a napkin. And something about him hit me. Not enough to place him. Not even close. Just familiar in a way that made my chest tighten for no clear reason. He was older, obviously. Late 30s, maybe pushing 40. Broader shoulders, a bit of stubble, that calm confidence people grow into. But there was something in the way he moved. Something in the way he tilted his head like he was always listening a little deeper than everyone else. I kept staring longer than I should have. He noticed. "Something on my face?" he asked, glancing back at me with a half smile. I blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "No, sorry. I just thought you were someone else." He chuckled softly. "Happens more than you'd think." His voice. That was the first crack. Low, steady, a little warm around the edges. It stirred something in me I couldn't explain yet, like hearing a song you forgot you loved. I forced a small laugh. "Yeah, guess we all have one of those faces." We stepped forward in line together. I tried to drop it, but my brain wouldn't let go. There was a pull now, subtle but persistent, like something just out of reach. When he ordered, I heard his name. Otis. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a dramatic reaction. No sudden realization. Just a quiet, creeping feeling spreading through me, like a memory slowly waking up after years of sleep. Otis. No way. It couldn't be. Not after 20 years. I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was a common enough name. And even if it was him, there's no way he'd look like that now. No way life would circle back like that, not in some random cafe on a random day. Still, I couldn't stop looking. We ended up standing next to each other while waiting for our drinks. Close enough that I could catch little details now, the faint scar near his eyebrow, the way his fingers tapped lightly against the counter, like he had energy he didn't know what to do with. That scar. That stupid tiny scar. And just like that, it hit me. Clear. Sudden. Unavoidable. Otis. The same Otis who used to race me down dirt roads behind our old neighborhood. The same Otis who shoved me into a lake once, and then jumped in after me because he thought I couldn't swim. The same Otis who, on one very specific summer night, looked at me like I was something more than just his best friend. I felt my throat go dry. 20 years. And he was right here. Right next to me. Completely unaware. I should have said something immediately. That would have been the normal thing to do. "Hey, are you Otis from?" But I didn't. Because suddenly I wasn't sure I wanted him to recognize me. I wasn't that same kid anymore. Life had a way of sanding down who you used to be, reshaping you into something quieter, more guarded. Back then, everything felt simple. Loud. Honest. Now, things were complicated. And the way he stood there, relaxed, confident, like the world made sense to him, I didn't know where I fit into that version of his life. "Xander." The barista called my name, snapping me out of it. Otis glanced at me again, this time more deliberately. His eyes lingered for a second, like he was trying to place me now. "You sure we haven't met?" he asked. There it was. That tiny spark of recognition. I felt my pulse jump. I could have told him right then. Could have closed the gap, erased 20 years in a single sentence. But instead I shook my head. "Yeah," I said casually, picking up my drink. Pretty sure I'd remember. It was a lie. And the second I said it, I knew I'd just made things a lot more complicated than they needed to be. He studied me for another second, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. But as I walked past him, I could feel his eyes still on me. And something told me he wasn't entirely convinced. I told myself I was just going to sit down, drink my coffee, and leave. That was the plan. Simple. Clean. No past getting dragged into the present. But instead, I chose the table directly across from him. I wish I could say it was an accident, but it wasn't. There were plenty of empty seats. I just picked that one. Close enough to see him without it being obvious. Close enough to feel him there. And yeah, I was aware of how ridiculous that sounded. 20 years. And suddenly I'm acting like some awkward teenager again. I kept my eyes on my cup at first, pretending to be busy, but my attention kept drifting. Every time he moved, every time he shifted in his seat or ran a hand through his hair, I noticed. He had changed. Of course he had. But not in the way I expected. Back then, Otis had been loud. Reckless. The kind of guy who'd drag you into trouble and laugh the whole way through it. He didn't think twice about anything. This version of him was different. Quieter. More controlled. But there was still something underneath it. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened when he focused, or how his foot bounced slightly under the table like he was holding back energy. Same Otis. Just grown up. And somehow that made it worse. Because now I couldn't stop thinking about that summer. The last summer before everything changed. We were 16. Too old to be kids, too dumb to be anything else. It was one of those nights where the air felt too warm, like something was about to happen. We'd ended up by the lake. Same place we always went. Talking about nothing, skipping rocks, just existing in that easy way we used to. And then there was this moment. This long, quiet pause where neither of us said anything. I remember looking at him, and he was already looking at me. Not joking. Not teasing. Just looking. And I swear, something shifted right there. You ever think about leaving this place? He asked. Yeah, I said. All the time. He nodded slowly. Me too. Another pause. Then softer. You think we'd still know each other if we did? I laughed a little, trying to shake off how serious he suddenly sounded. Of course we would. You're stuck with me. But he didn't laugh. He just kept looking at me like he was trying to figure something out. And then, Xander. His voice, pulling me back to the present. I looked up too fast. Otis was standing next to my table now. I hadn't even seen him get up. Sorry, he said, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. Mind if I sit? My brain short-circuited for a second. Yeah? Sure. Not exactly smooth. He sat down like it was the most natural thing in the world, like we hadn't just met 10 minutes ago under completely normal circumstances. But there was nothing normal about this anymore. Up close, it was even harder to ignore. The scar. The eyes. God, his eyes. Same exact shade. Same way they locked onto you like they were trying to read between your words. You sure we don't know each other? He asked again, this time more quietly. There was something different in his tone now. Less casual. More certain. I forced a small shrug. Pretty sure. He leaned back slightly, studying me. You just look. He hesitated. Familiar. My chest tightened. I took a sip of my coffee just to give myself something to do. Maybe I've got one of those faces too. Maybe, he said. But he didn't sound convinced. A small silence settled between us, not awkward exactly. Just heavy. Charged. And I could feel it building again. That same tension from years ago, creeping back and like no time had passed at all. It didn't make sense. We were strangers now. We should have been strangers. So, Xander, he said, my name rolling off his tongue like he was testing it. What do you do? The way he said it. Something about it felt off. Too careful. Like he was paying attention to how it felt to say my name. I do some freelance stuff, I said. Design, mostly. He nodded slowly. That fits. What does that mean? He smirked, just a little. I don't know. Just feels right. There it was. That old version of him slipping through. I felt it hit me harder than it should have. And you? I asked, trying to steady myself. Construction, he said. Project management now, mostly. Wow, I said lightly. Responsible. He laughed under his breath. Yeah. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not, I said quickly. But he caught it. Sure you're not. We held eye contact a second too long. And suddenly it was back again. That exact same feeling from the lake. Like we were standing on the edge of something neither of us fully understood. He leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the table. You ever lived around here before? He asked. There it was. The question I'd been waiting for. Or dreading. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. This was it. This was where I either told him the truth or kept lying. I hesitated just a second too long. And he noticed. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion, but in recognition. Like something was finally starting to click. Xander, he said again, softer this time. And the way he said it. Like he'd said it before? A long time ago. Have we met? I looked at him. Really looked at him. And for a split second I saw it. Not the man sitting in front of me. But the boy he used to be. The one who stood by that lake, looking at me like I meant something more. My chest tightened. And before I could stop myself. Yeah, I said quietly. His expression shifted instantly. You have? I nodded. And just like that. There was no going back. The second I said it, I felt it shift. Not just in me, in him. Otis straightened slightly, like something inside him had snapped into focus. His eyes locked onto mine, sharper now, searching. Where? He asked immediately. Too fast. Too direct. I should have expected that. I hesitated, buying myself a second. A long time ago. His jaw tightened just a little. That doesn't really narrow it down. I know. Another pause. He leaned back again, but this time it wasn't relaxed, it was calculated. Like he was stepping back to look at the bigger picture. School? He tried. I shook my head. Work? No. Friends of friends? I almost smiled. You always did this. That caught him off guard. What? Trying to solve things like it's a puzzle, I said. You don't like not knowing. The words slipped out before I could stop them. And the second they did, I knew I'd said too much. Otis froze. Not completely, but enough. His eyes narrowed slightly, studying me in a different way now. Not just curious anymore. Recognizing. How would you know that? He asked quietly. My chest tightened. I looked down at my coffee, watching the surface ripple slightly as I shifted the cup in my hands. Lucky guess, I muttered. Yeah, he said slowly. Doesn't feel like one. Silence again. He didn't push right away this time, which somehow made it worse. Because I could feel him thinking. Connecting things. And I knew, once he got there, there'd be no undoing it. You said it was a long time ago. He continued more carefully now. How long? I swallowed. About 20 years. That did it. I saw it happen in real time. The way his expression changed, not fully, not all at once, but like pieces were starting to slide into place. 20, he repeated under his breath. His gaze drifted slightly, unfocused for a second, like he was digging through old memories he hadn't touched in years. Then back to me. More intense now. Where did you grow up? He asked. I hesitated again. He noticed. Xander. God, the way he said my name. Like it meant something. Just outside of Millbrook, I said finally. And that was the moment everything clicked. I watched it hit him. Not slowly this time. All at once. His eyes widened just slightly, his breath catching before he could hide it. He leaned forward again, closer now, like he needed to see me better. No way, he said under his breath. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Millbrook? He repeated. You're from. He stopped himself. Because now he was really looking. Not just at my face, but through it. Past the years. Past the changes. Back to something buried deep. You used to. He started, then frowned slightly. You had. I raised an eyebrow. Had what? I don't know. He muttered, almost frustrated. You look different. People do that, I said quietly. He ignored that. Still staring. Still searching. And then. Wait. His voice dropped. His entire expression shifted. And suddenly I saw it. He knew. Or at least, he was right on the edge of knowing. You're. He started. My heart slammed against my ribs. Don't say it. I wasn't ready. Not like this. Not here. You're from the lake, aren't you? He said. I blinked. That wasn't what I expected. The lake? I repeated. Yeah, he said, leaning in even closer now, like he was chasing the memory. That old spot behind the trees. We used to go there all the time. I let out a slow breath. Relief. And disappointment. Mixed together. Yeah, I admitted. I remember that. His eyes lit up slightly. Right? And there was that old dock, well, barely a dock, he added with a small laugh. More like a broken plank. I nodded, a faint smile pulling at my lips despite everything. Yeah. You fell through it once. He blinked. I what? You tried to jump across, I said. Missed. Completely ate it. No way, he said, a grin breaking through. I did not. You did, I cut in. And then you tried to pretend it didn't hurt. He stared at me. Really stared. And this time, there was no mistaking it. Recognition. Real recognition. How the hell do you know that? He asked, almost laughing now, but there was something else under it. Something deeper. I held his gaze. My chest tight. Because I was there. The words landed between us. Heavy. Final. And just like that, everything changed. His smile faded slowly, replaced by something quieter. More serious. More real. You were there, he repeated. A pause. Then softer. Xander. The way he said it now. Not testing. Not guessing. Remembering. I felt it hit me straight in the chest. You pushed me in, he added suddenly. I blinked. What? You pushed me in the lake, he said, pointing at me like he just cracked the case. After I fell through the dock. I let out a short laugh. That is not what happened. That is exactly what happened. You were already soaked. You made it worse. We both stopped at the same time. Because suddenly, we weren't strangers anymore. Not even close. The air between us felt different now. Lighter, but also heavier in a way that was harder to explain. Because this wasn't just random anymore. This was history. Shared. Real. And then, his expression shifted again. Subtle. But I caught it. His eyes flicked over my face, slower this time. More deliberate. Like he was comparing what he remembered to what was in front of him. You were. He started, then hesitated. I tensed slightly. Here it comes. You were always around, he said instead. Back then. I exhaled quietly. Yeah. I was. Always around. Just not in the way he remembered. Yeah, I said. Something like that. He nodded slowly. But I could tell. He wasn't fully there yet. Not all the way. Not at that moment by the lake. Not at the thing that changed everything between us. And part of me was relieved. Because if he did remember that, I had no idea what I'd say. Or what he would. We stayed there longer than either of us probably planned. What started as a quick coffee turned into something else. Something that felt familiar in a way that was hard to explain. Otis leaned back in his chair, watching me with that same quiet intensity, like now that he'd started remembering, he didn't want to stop. Man, he said, shaking his head slightly. This is crazy. Yeah, I muttered. A little. A little? He huffed a quiet laugh. I haven't thought about Millbrook in years. And now you just show up? Wasn't exactly planned. No, I guess not. Another pause. But this one wasn't awkward. It was full. Like there was too much sitting between us to even know where to start. You disappeared, he said suddenly. That caught me off guard. I looked up. What? After that summer, he continued, his tone more serious now. You were just gone. My chest tightened. Of course he remembered that part. I moved, I said simply. Yeah, I figured that much, he replied. But you didn't tell anyone. You just. He made a small motion with his hand. Vanished. I swallowed. There were a lot of reasons for that. None of them easy to explain. Things were complicated, I said. He held my gaze. Were they? There was something in the way he asked that made my stomach twist. Like he knew there was more to it. Like he felt it. I looked away for a second. Yeah. Silence stretched between us again. He didn't push. But he didn't drop it either. You could have said goodbye, he added, quieter this time. That one hit harder than I expected. I didn't think it would matter, I said before I could stop myself. The second the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Because I knew that wasn't true. And something in his expression told me he knew it too. Didn't matter? He repeated. I shrugged lightly, trying to play it off. We were kids. Yeah, he said. We were. But his tone didn't agree. At all. I could feel the shift again. That tension coming back. Stronger this time. More personal. He leaned forward, resting his arms on the table again, closer than before. Funny thing is, he said slowly, I do remember someone disappearing like that. My pulse picked up. I stayed quiet. Drove me crazy for a while, he added. I forced a small, neutral expression. Yeah? Yeah. I just can't seem to remember who it was. There it was. Right on the edge. My chest felt tight again. He was so close. Too close. And suddenly, sitting there across from him felt dangerous. Because this wasn't just about catching up anymore. This was about that night. And I could feel it coming. Like a storm you know is about to hit. You remember the last time we were at the lake? I asked before I could stop myself. The words slipped out. But maybe part of me wanted this. Wanted to see if he'd go there. Otis stilled. Just slightly. But enough. Last time? He repeated. I nodded. His gaze drifted again, searching inward this time. Digging. I watched him carefully. The way his brow furrowed. The way his jaw tightened just a little. He was trying. Really trying. There were a lot of times, he said slowly. Yeah, I replied. But I mean the last one. He looked back at me. And something shifted again. Because now he understood what I meant. Oh, he said quietly. That one word carried way more weight than it should have. You mean? He trailed off. I didn't help him. Didn't fill in the blanks. I just watched. Waited. I remember we stayed late, he said, his voice lower now. Later than usual. My heart started pounding. Yeah. There was no one else around. He continued. Yeah. Another pause. Longer this time. Heated that night, he added. Couldn't sleep. I nodded slowly. You never could. A faint smirk tugged at his lips. Still can't. But it faded quickly. Because now. He was getting closer. I could see it. Feel it. There was something, he said, frowning slightly. Different. My chest tightened. Different how? I asked, even though I already knew. He didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed locked on mine. Searching. Like the answer might be written there. I don't know, he admitted finally. Just felt like something was about to happen. There it was. Exactly how I remembered it. I let out a slow breath. Yeah, I said quietly. It did. He went still. Completely still this time. And the air between us shifted again. Heavy. Charged. Real. What happened? He asked. That question. Simple. Direct. But it hit like a punch to the chest. Because now I had a choice. Again. Tell him. Or don't. But this time, it didn't feel like I could lie my way out of it. I held his gaze. My pulse loud in my ears. You really don't remember? I asked. His expression tightened slightly. Should I? I hesitated. Just for a second. You kissed me. The words landed between us. Sharp. Unavoidable. And everything. Everything. Went completely still. For a second. He didn't react. At all. No movement. No expression. Nothing. Just still. Like his brain hadn't caught up yet. You what? He said finally. His voice was quieter now. Not confused exactly, just thrown off balance. You kissed me. I repeated, steadier this time. Saying it once felt like a mistake. Saying it twice made it real. Otis blinked, his eyes flicking away from mine for the first time since he sat down. No, he said, almost automatically. I think I'd remember that. I let out a small breath. Yeah, I said. You'd think so. That stung him. I saw it immediately. His jaw tightened, and he leaned back slightly, running a hand over the back of his neck. I'm not saying you're lying, he added quickly. He exhaled. That's not. I don't remember that happening. I know. The words came out softer than I expected. Because I did know. That was the part that stuck with me all these years. Not what happened. But the fact that it clearly didn't mean the same thing to him. Silence settled between us again. But this time it was different. Heavier. Uneven. You sure it was me? He asked after a moment. I almost laughed at that. Yeah, I said, meeting his eyes again. Pretty sure I'd remember something like that. That landed. Hard. He looked at me again, really looked, and this time there was something else in his expression. Not just confusion. Something closer to guilt. I wouldn't just. He started, then stopped. Wouldn't just what? I asked. Kiss someone out of nowhere, he said, like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. I tilted my head slightly. It wasn't out of nowhere. Another pause. What does that mean? He asked. I hesitated. Because explaining it meant going back there. Fully. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that. But at this point, we were already in it. That whole night, I said slowly, you were acting different. His brow furrowed. Different how? You were quiet, I said. For you anyway. Kept asking weird questions. A faint flicker of recognition passed over his face. Like what? I held his gaze. Like if we'd still know each other if we left. That did something. I saw it. A small shift. A memory brushing the surface. Yeah, he muttered. That sounds like something I'd say. You kept looking at me. I continued. He went still again. And then you just. I paused, the moment replaying in my head like it had never left. Did it? His throat moved as he swallowed. Did I say anything? He asked quietly. I shook my head. No. Another silence. Thicker this time. Now he was trying to feel it, not just remember it. And that's when it started hitting him. I could see it. The way his posture shifted. The way his eyes drifted again, but not unfocused, more like he was replaying something from a different angle. I remember, he said slowly. My chest tightened. Yeah? I remember being close, he added. Like really close. I didn't say anything. Didn't want to interrupt it. Like I was about to do something. He continued, his voice lower now. And I knew I shouldn't. There it was. I felt it like a punch. You didn't seem like you thought that, I said quietly. He looked at me. And for the first time since I told him, there was something vulnerable there. I probably did, he admitted. I just didn't care in the moment. That tracked way too well. And after? I asked. That's where his expression changed again. Now we were at the part he really didn't remember. I don't know, he said. What happened after? I hesitated. Because this was the part I'd carried with me. The part that made everything else stick. You pulled away, I said. He nodded slightly, like that made sense. And then? He asked. I held his gaze. You laughed. That hit harder than anything else I'd said. I watched it land. Watched the way his face shifted, like something inside him didn't want to accept that. I laughed? He repeated. Yeah. No, he said immediately, shaking his head. No, I wouldn't. You did. My voice was calm, but firm. And that's what made it worse. Why would I do that? He asked, almost frustrated now. I let out a slow breath. Because you didn't know what to do, I said. So you made it into a joke. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Real. And then you said, I stopped myself. He leaned forward slightly. I said what? I almost didn't want to tell him. But he deserved to know. You said, don't make it weird. That one broke something. I saw it in his face. The way his expression dropped. The way his eyes flickered was something that looked a lot like regret. Shit, he muttered under his breath. Yeah. That was about right. I don't remember saying that, he added quietly. I know. But I believe you. I nodded once. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Now everything was out there. No more half-truths. No more guessing. Just the reality of what happened 20 years ago. And the fact that only one of us had been carrying it this whole time. I'm sorry, he said finally. Simple. Honest. But it still took me off guard. I looked up at him. For what? For that, he said. For how I handled it. Even if I don't remember it, I know that sounds like something I'd do back then. I studied him for a second. And the weird thing was, I believed him. That wasn't even the worst part, I said before I could stop myself. His expression tightened. What do you mean? I hesitated. Because now we were stepping into something deeper. Something I hadn't planned on saying today. But at this point, what was the point in holding back? You avoided me after that, I said. His eyes widened slightly. I did. Yeah, I said. For the rest of the summer. That one really got to him. Because this he didn't expect. I wouldn't just. He started again, then stopped himself. You did, I said gently. And this time, he didn't argue. He just sat there. Quiet. Taking it in. And for the first time since we started talking, Otis didn't look confident. He looked shaken. He didn't try to brush it off. Didn't joke. Didn't deflect. That's how I knew this version of Otis was different. 20 years ago, he would have laughed it away again. Said something stupid. Changed the subject. Now, he just sat there. Quiet. Processing. I avoided you, he repeated, more to himself than to me. Yeah. He leaned back, dragging a hand down his face like he was trying to wake himself up from something. I don't. He stopped, exhaling sharply. I don't remember doing that. I figured. That's not. He shook his head. That's not how I saw things back then. I raised an eyebrow slightly. How did you see things? He let out a dry laugh. Honestly? I thought you pulled away. That caught me off guard. What? Yeah. he said, looking up at me again. After that summer, you were just gone. No calls, no anything. I figured I did something to piss you off. I stared at him. That's what you remember? Yeah. A strange silence filled the space between us. Because somehow, we both walked away from the same moment, thinking the other one was the one who left. That's not what happened, I said slowly. Then what did happen? He asked. I hesitated. Because this part felt stupid now. After everything. But back then, it didn't. You stopped talking to me, I said. Every time I came around, you'd either leave or act like nothing happened. His brow furrowed deeply. No, he said, quieter now. I wouldn't. You did. I cut in, not harsh, just certain. And after a while, I stopped trying. He stared at me. Really stared. Like he was trying to line up two completely different versions of the same story. That doesn't make sense, he muttered. It didn't to me either. Another pause. Longer this time. He leaned forward again, elbows on the table, hands clasped loosely like he needed something to ground himself. So let me get this straight, he said slowly. I kiss you, freak out, turn it into a joke, then spend the rest of the summer avoiding you? Yeah, I said. That's about it. And you, what? He asked. Just waited for me to say something? At that, I let out a quiet breath. Yeah, I admitted. That landed. Harder than anything else. Because now it wasn't just about him anymore. Now it was about both of us. You could have said something too, he pointed out, not accusing, just honest. I was 16, I said. You were you. He frowned slightly. What's that supposed to mean? You were confident, I said. Loud. Everyone liked you. I wasn't exactly the guy who was gonna go, hey, remember when you kissed me and then pretended it didn't happen? He winced. Okay, yeah, he muttered. That's fair. Silence again. But softer now. Less sharp. Because the edges of it were starting to make sense. We were idiots, he said after a moment. I huffed a small laugh. Yeah. Pretty much. Another pause. But this one felt different. Lighter. Like we'd finally stopped pulling in opposite directions. Otis leaned back in his chair again, looking at me in a way that was harder to read now. Not just curious. Not just nostalgic. Something else. You thought it didn't mean anything to me, he said. It wasn't a question. I held his gaze. Did it? I asked. He didn't answer right away. And that told me everything. I don't know, he said finally. Honest. Frustratingly honest. I don't remember it, he added. Not fully. Just pieces. I nodded slowly. That's kind of the problem. Yeah. Another quiet beat. But I do remember you, he said suddenly. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? I remember you being there, he said. All the time. I remember, looking for you, even if I didn't realize that's what I was doing. My chest tightened slightly. That doesn't sound like someone avoiding me. I know, he said. That's why this is messing with my head. He let out a quiet breath, glancing down at the table before looking back up at me. There's something about you that feels. He paused, searching for the word. Familiar in a way that's not just memory. I didn't say anything. Didn't trust myself to. Like I missed something, he added. That one hit. Because yeah, he did. We both did. And now here we were. 20 years later. Sitting across from each other like we hadn't lost all that time over something neither of us understood back then. You did, I said quietly. He held my gaze. I'm starting to realize that. Another pause. But this time, neither of us looked away. And the air between us shifted again. Not heavy. Not awkward. Just real. So what now? He asked. Simple question. But it carried weight. Because this wasn't just about the past anymore. This was about now. I leaned back slightly, exhaling through my nose. I don't know, I admitted. Yeah, he said softly. Me either. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. But I don't really feel like walking away again. That felt different. Not rushed. Not intense. Just clear. I studied him for a second. This version of Otis. Older. Quieter. But still him. Yeah, I said. I'd rather not do that twice. He smiled a little more at that. And for a second, it felt easy. Like maybe, just maybe, we'd get a second chance at something we never really understood the first time. But then, his expression shifted again. More focused. More deliberate. There's just one thing I don't get, he said. Here we go. What? I asked. He leaned forward slightly. Closer again. And my pulse picked up without my permission. If I felt something back then, he said slowly, even if I handled it like an idiot. I swallowed. Why does it still feel like it's not finished? That question. That one changed everything. Because I felt it too. I just hadn't said it out loud. Until now. I held his gaze. My chest tight. Because it isn't, I said quietly. And the second the words left my mouth, the tension between us snapped back into place. Stronger than ever. Neither of us moved. Not right away. But something had already shifted, again. Only this time, it wasn't subtle. It wasn't buried under old memories or half-remembered moments. It was right there. Present. Alive. And impossible to ignore. Otis was still leaning forward, closer than before. Close enough that I could see the small details again, the faint scar, the way his jaw tightened when he was thinking too hard. The way his eyes stayed locked on mine like he didn't want to miss anything. Not finished, he repeated quietly. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Because we both felt it now. That same tension from 20 years ago, but sharper. Clearer. No confusion this time about what it was. He exhaled slowly, like he was trying to steady himself. This is insane, he muttered, almost under his breath. Yeah, I said. A little. No. He shook his head slightly, a faint, disbelieving smile pulling at his lips. I mean, I walk into a random cafe, and suddenly I'm sitting across from someone I. He stopped himself. I noticed that. You what? I asked. He hesitated. And for the first time since this all started, Otis looked unsure. I don't know yet, he said honestly. That should have frustrated me. But it didn't. Because at least this time, he wasn't pretending. Silence settled between us again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt loaded. Like we were both standing on the edge of something, waiting to see who'd move first. And then, he did. His hand shifted slightly on the table. Not a big movement. Not obvious. But closer. Just a few inches. Enough that I noticed. Enough that my pulse immediately picked up. I glanced down at it for half a second, then back up at him. He saw that too. Of course he did. You ever think about that night? He asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. Yeah, I admitted. More than I probably should have. He nodded slowly. Me too. I frowned slightly. You said you didn't remember it. I don't, he said. Not clearly. But I remember how it felt. That hit. Because yeah, that part never really leaves. What did it feel like? I asked before I could stop myself. He held my gaze. Like I was about to do something that mattered, he said. My chest tightened. And you still laughed, I said softly. A flicker of regret crossed his face again. Yeah, he admitted. Sounds like I ruined it. You didn't ruin it, I said. He raised an eyebrow slightly. No? You just didn't understand it. That sat between us for a second. Then he nodded. Yeah, he said. That sounds more accurate. Another pause. Closer now. Everything felt closer. Do you still think about it the same way? He asked. I knew what he meant. Not just the memory. The feeling. I held his gaze. No, I said honestly. Why not? Because now I understand what it was. Because now I know what I felt. Because now I know what I wanted back then. But I didn't say all that. Instead, because now you're sitting right here, I said. That did something. I saw it. The way his expression shifted. The way his focus sharpened again. Yeah, he said quietly. I am. His hand moved again. This time, not subtle. It closed the gap completely. Resting on the table, just barely touching mine. Not fully. Just enough. Like he was giving me the choice. My breath caught slightly. And for a second, I didn't move. Didn't pull away. Didn't lean in. Just stayed there. Feeling it. That small point of contact. But it didn't feel small. It felt like everything we didn't say back then. Everything we missed. Everything we almost had. You know, he said, his voice lower now. I keep thinking about what you said. About what? That I laughed because I didn't know what to do. I nodded slightly. Yeah. He tilted his head just a little, studying me again. And what if I know what to do now? My pulse spiked. Do you? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me. Closer. More certain. And then, his fingers shifted slightly. Not grabbing. Not forcing. Just sliding over mine. Deliberate. Warm. Real. I felt it everywhere. You tell me, he said quietly. That was it. That was the moment. 20 years ago. He moved first. And then ruined it. This time. He didn't rush. Didn't push. He just waited. And for the first time. So did I. But not out of fear. Not out of confusion. Just choice. I turned my hand slightly under his, letting our fingers fit together. That was enough. I saw it in his face. That small shift. That quiet understanding. Yeah, he said softly. That's better. A small laugh escaped me. Definitely better. We stayed like that for a second. Just sitting there. Hands barely intertwined on a cafe table like it was the most normal thing in the world. But it didn't feel normal. It felt right. His eyes flicked back up to mine. Something deeper settling in now. Can I ask you something? He said. Yeah. If I hadn't messed it up back then. He paused. Do you think things would have been different? I thought about that. Really thought about it. And then I shook my head slightly. No. He blinked. No? No, I repeated. We weren't ready for it. That surprised him. But now? He asked. I held his gaze. This time, I didn't hesitate. Now we are. That was the moment it finally clicked into place. Not just the past, but the present. And whatever this was about to become. We didn't leave right away. Neither of us said it out loud, but there was this quiet understanding we weren't done yet. Not with the conversation. Not with whatever this was. But eventually, reality crept back in. People moving around us. Cups clinking. The world continuing like something hadn't just shifted in a way that felt significant. Otis was the first to break the stillness. We should probably get out of here, he said, glancing around briefly before looking back at me. Yeah, I nodded. Probably. Neither of us moved. He let out a quiet laugh. We're really good at this. At what? Dragging things out. I smirked slightly. Took us 20 years. Might as well take another 5 minutes. Fair point. But this time, he stood up. I followed. The air outside felt different. Cooler. Quieter. Like stepping out of something and into something else at the same time. We stood there for a second on the sidewalk, either of us quite sure what the next move was. Which was kind of ironic, considering everything we'd just worked through. Otis shoved his hands into his pockets, looking around briefly before settling back on me. So, he said. So, I echoed. Another pause. But it wasn't awkward. It just was. I don't really want this to be a well, that was crazy, see you never kind of thing, he said. Yeah, I replied. I'd be a little annoyed if it was. A little? Okay, very. He smiled at that. Good. That felt normal. But also, he added, a bit more serious now, I don't want to mess it up again. That landed. Because yeah. That was the part neither of us wanted to say too loudly. I don't think we will, I said. He raised an eyebrow slightly. You sound pretty confident. I think we got the awkward, confusing, emotionally incompetent phase out of the way already. He huffed a laugh. Yeah, we definitely nailed that part. Exactly. A small silence followed. What are you doing right now? He asked. I blinked. Right now? Yeah, he said. Like, after this. I shrugged slightly. Nothing planned. He nodded once, like he expected that. Good. I narrowed my eyes slightly. Good? Yeah, he said, stepping just a little closer. Because I'm not really ready to just go our separate ways yet. My pulse picked up again. There it was. Not subtle. Not complicated. Just honest. Yeah, I said. Me either. Another step closer. Not rushed. Not forced. Just natural. And suddenly, we weren't standing on opposite sides of anything anymore. We were just there. Together. You know, he said, his voice a little lower now. There's something that's been bothering me. Only one thing? I asked lightly. He smirked. One main thing. All right. What is it? He held my gaze. Serious again. Back then, I made the first move. My chest tightened slightly. Yeah, I said. And then I screwed it up. I didn't argue with that. So, he continued, I feel like I should get one more shot at doing it right. There it was. Clear. Direct. Very Otis. I tilted my head slightly, watching him. And what does doing it right look like to you? He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me. Like he was making sure. Like this time. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't reacting. He was choosing. And then, he stepped in. Close enough that there was no space left to question it. His hand came up, not sudden, not overwhelming, just resting lightly at the side of my neck. Grounding. Warm. My breath caught slightly. But I didn't pull away. Didn't hesitate. Because this time, I knew exactly what this was. And so did he. Tell me if I mess this up again, he murmured. A small smile tugged at my lips. I won't. And then, he kissed me. Not rushed. Not uncertain. Nothing like before. This time, it was steady. Intentional. Like he actually understood what he was doing. What it meant. And it wasn't some big, dramatic moment. It was quiet. Real. Exactly what it should have been 20 years ago. My hand came up to his without thinking, fingers curling slightly like I needed to make sure he was actually there. He was. And when he pulled back just slightly, just enough to look at me, there was no confusion in his expression. No hesitation. Just clarity. Yeah, he said softly. That's definitely better. I let out a quiet breath, a small laugh slipping through. Yeah, I agreed. Way better. We stayed close. Didn't rush to fill the space with words. Didn't need to. Because for the first time, there was nothing unfinished between us. No confusion. No mistiming. Just two people who finally met each other at the right moment. Even if it took 20 years to get there,